All right, so good afternoon. Super happy to be back here. Last year I was in Black Hat Europe too. I wasn't giving a talk, I gave a training, a crypto training. I submitted a training again this year, but Black Hat didn't accept it, but they accepted my talk, so sort of good reason to come. So yeah, I'm going to talk about blockchain, crypto money. So how many of you still own cryptocurrency? Quite a few. Maybe you should sell before it crashes. Don't take my advice, but okay. So I'm not going to make any jokes about blockchain. It's too easy, especially these days. So I'll try to focus on the technical aspects. So quickly about me. So I'm JP. I work for Kudaski Security, and I've done a lot of let's say a lot of security audits, a lot of security reviews for blockchain companies, trying to break their stuff, looking at source code, trying to find bugs and exploit them. I've also been doing for fun, some weekends I was bored and started looking at some code and found some bugs, and like some people, try to make easy money. And I'm also involved in the design of a commercial product for doing cryptocurrency storage, something that we sell to banks and this kind of financial institutions. So I know a bit how to design, how to protect crypto money, especially in the context of financial institutions in Switzerland. All right, so the title of the talk, I think, is Attacking and Defending Blockchain, but I think I will do the opposite way. I will start by the defending part, so how to protect your money, how to, what kind of wallet to use, and the second part will be about bugs. So this first part is not extremely technical, so if you know a bit about cryptocurrency wallets, this will probably be boring for you, because I will go through all the types of wallets, so I hope I will give some useful insights. And the second part will be slightly more technical, but then again, I won't go too much into the details because I don't have so much time. All right, sorry, defending and attacking blockchains, maybe a more adequate title. So what else? So I guess all the people who have crypto money in the room, you also have a wallet, sort of. But there's different types of wallets. So if you don't know cryptocurrency at all, unlike a real wallet where you have cash or credit cards, in a crypto money wallet, you don't actually store your money. There's no such thing as crypto money. You only store the data that allows you to spend the money you have, the money that is virtually somewhere on the blockchain. So this piece of data that can authorize someone to, let's say, to sign a check on your behalf, it's a secret value, obviously, because you don't want anyone to spend your money, so it has to be secret. And it's typically password, a passphrase, or something called a seed, which is a small piece of data, or a private key. So in the end, be it a passphrase or a seed, from this secret data you will derive a private key, and this private key will be used to sign the check, to actually sign the transaction using a digital signature algorithm. So for Bitcoin and Ethereum, you would use ECDSA with a specific elliptic curve, but other cryptocurrencies may use different signature algorithms. Okay. Yep, so you want to keep this value secret. And so to each private key, you have a public key associated. So if you know a bit about crypto, you always have private key and public key in the context of asymmetric crypto. So from this public key, you will derive an address. So the address of your account, so the data that people will use to send you money. So public key is generally public, but in the context of cryptocurrency, you don't always want to make your public key public. Why? Because if you say that, okay, MJP, my public key is this, then everybody will know what is my address, and they can look at the blockchain and see all the transactions from into this address. So they might figure out how much money I have. And if you use twice the same address, then people can link, of course, to transactions. So you don't necessarily want to publish your public key or your address. And ideally, you want to have a different address for each transaction. So there are generally two major classes of wallets, what we call hot wallets, which are more like checking accounts. So money that is ready to spend, that you can use every day to buy and sell crypto money. So if the cryptocurrency trades, you have to connect to a blockchain that is somewhere on the internet, so decentralized system, so it's not a single place, but this wallet must be connected to internet if you want to issue transactions. Okay. So of course, if your computer, be it laptop or mobile, is connected to the internet, then some hacker might try to connect to your machine and hack your operating system and steal your key and then steal your money. So it's safer not to have your private keys on a connected machine. So that's why we have cold wallets. So it's more like saving accounts, money that you want to store but that you will not use every day. So in this case, you want to keep it offline in some air gap machine. And typically, you would have more money on a cold wallet than on your hot wallet. So that's the right way to do the best practice. So I will go through the, let's say, 5 or 6 classes of wallets: online, mobile, desktop, paper, hardware. So now, how many of you have hardware wallets? Yeah, paper wallets maybe, or equivalent. Yeah, that's good. Paper. Okay, so an online wallet, it's not exactly a wallet, because what I call online wallet is when you use an exchange platform like Kraken, Coinbase, Bitstamp, Bittrex, Binance, all these platforms to store your money on your behalf. But actually, you don't have a wallet, so you don't have your private key. You don't know what is your private key, because in many cases there is no such thing as your private key or your seed or your wallet, because most of the exchange, they don't have an individual account per user. They have several accounts for all the exchange money. But let's say you want to receive money from your, let's say, Kraken or Coinbase account, you generate a new address. So your friend will send money to this address, and then it will instantaneously be forwarded to one of the hot or cold wallets of the exchange. And then the exchange is just keeping track of how much money does every of their customer has on their account. So you don't have your own private key on most exchanges. I know that a minority works this way, but the majority does not. Okay. So what's the advantages? So it's convenient. So you don't have to take care about protecting your keys, backing up your keys. The exchange is supposedly doing this for you. And you can access it from any device, so as long as you know the credentials, you have the 2FA set up. And it's also super convenient if you want to buy and sell from different currencies, because you have direct access to the market, to the order book, so you can directly send, buy or sell orders on the platform. Okay. Now maybe the biggest downside, obviously, security. So you have to trust the exchange. So trust it from 2 perspectives. Trust them trusting them in being honest, not stealing your money, and trusting their IT infrastructure and their security, because you don't want them to be hacked. If someone else hacks into their infrastructure, they might steal their money, at least in the hot wallet storage. So virtually all the cryptocurrency exchanges have been hacked at some point. Many times it was at least partially an insider job. So I don't want to blame the exchange platform. It's very, very hard to do. It's very hard to secure an exchange. And maybe the best strategy to mitigate the risk is to have as much money as possible on your cold storage. And it's just not a technology problem like put your firewalls and update your systems. It's mostly, from my experience, let's say an operational, procedural burden to have the right process, the right accountability and tracking of who's doing what. Okay, so second point, the availability. So if for some reason, let's say in last December, I don't know if you are using Kraken, so it was virtually impossible to log into your account because users were DOSing the platform. So if the platform is down, you can't have access to your money. And if the platform goes bankrupt, you may or may not recover some of your money. So it depends if they're covered by banking regulations. So for example, if they have a banking license, they might be obligated to give you back a certain amount of money. But most are not. Okay. Okay, so the second part, what they call online interfaces. So maybe as opposed to online wallets. So it's online in the sense that when you connect, for example, to MyEther wallet, you receive some application, some JavaScript application from the MyEther wallet servers, but all the logic will happen client-side on your machine. So you will enter your private key or your passphrase or an equivalent piece of data, and you will create the transaction, which is like just a piece of data that includes the sender, receiver, amount, and other information. And then this application will send this transaction to a node of the network that will actually, let's say, record it into the blockchain. But in this type of application, your private key is never sent, supposedly, to a third party. So of course, you have to trust that the JavaScript you're receiving is not doing anything evil, not exfiltrating your key to an outside server. And yeah, so compared to the online wallet, your credentials stay on your machine and they don't go outside. And the UI is convenient. You don't have to type in the command line or to write a script. So it's fairly easy. Maybe the biggest risk is phishing. Now, like everyone can put up a website that replicates Major Wallet that looks the same, but that does something a bit different, of course. You also, again, you have to trust that the provider, so again, in this example, Major Wallet is serving you the right information. So they may try to steal your money, or someone else might hack into their infrastructure and modify the data that's sent, or someone might try to man in the middle your connection and send you modified data. Maybe one downside is that it's just an interface to the blockchain, so you give it your private key or your passphrase, and it does what you want it to do. But then again, you have to back up your keys and to manage your keys by yourself. And if you lose your key, then it's gone. Okay. So mobile wallets, I've never actually used mobile wallets. It scared me a bit, also maybe because I don't trust these guys. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but so in this case, it's just a mobile application where you enter your credentials, or that would generate credentials for you, to generate a wallet for you, and the keys are stored locally, presumably in the safest way. But as far as I can tell, it's not always the case. So they try sometimes to bring you some fancy features like what2FA or cold storage. So when you hear cold storage from a mobile app, most of the time it doesn't mean anything technologically complicated. It just means that you have your public key and your address listed, so monitored by the application. For example, if you receive some money, it will tell you the new amount that you have on this account, but your private key will not be registered into the application. So when I say cold storage, it's just that, okay, we have the public key, but not the private key. So of course, if you don't have the private key, you cannot sign, you cannot issue transactions. So maybe you heard about Copay, Jaxx, Mycelium. So here the advantage is that it's probably more secure than online wallets. So again, you can discuss. It's not always an absolute truth, but you have to trust the application once you download it once, and then you have to trust the provider if you update it. But it's not like an online wallet where each time you will connect, you will receive JavaScript from the server. So you have presumably full control on your phones. Normally, all the private keys will stay on your device. And another advantage is convenience. So you're in the street, you can buy more Bitcoins or sell if it's going up. So I guess that's why people use this. So in terms of security, so of course, if your OS is compromised, then one of the first things that hackers will try to do is look for Bitcoin or look for cryptocurrency private keys. So of course, Android is riskier than iOS. But again, I've never used a mobile wallet even on iOS. And if you lose your mobile device, then of course your private keys are gone. So you want to have a backup somewhere else than on your device. A desktop wallet is not much different. It's just another wallet functionality, but on your desktop. And again, they try to have some useful features like multi-signatures and 2FA. So maybe you heard about Armory, Copay, Electrum, Exodus. What you see here is a screen cap of the Electrum, which is one of the most popular Bitcoin wallets. So the interface looks a bit 90s. I don't know if it's Java Swing, but it's not very, very fancy. So again, it's more secure than online wallets, and you have control on your money. There's arguably a lower risk of losing your laptop or desktop than losing your mobile phones. So you have the same problem if the OS is compromised, obviously. But from my experience, the UI, the interface is not as convenient as the one that you have on mobile platforms. You need to know a bit more how blockchain, how cryptocurrency is working. Let me give you a small example. So if you install Electrum, so you have this, the first time you open, you want to create default underscore wallet, and you have this poorly designed logo, so it's not really reassuring for something that will store all your money. And you have the choice between standard wallet, wallet with 2FA, multi-signature wallet, or import Bitcoin. So you may know what is two-factor authentication. Some people may not. You may not know what is multi-sig wallet. So maybe it gives you some additional information here for non-technical people. And then it will generate your secrets. So I think cryptocurrency is one of the, let's say, one of the things that they tend to do right and maybe better than other security product is like the generation of secret credentials. There's this BIP39 standard that defines a way to represent a high entropy secret in the form of a sequence of words, so typically 12 to 15 words taken from a dictionary with certain criteria, like it will only pick words that don't look like each other, that don't have a common prefix. So here, under the hood, it would use a PRNG and generate a random value, and it would transform this random value into a string, into a list of 12 to 15 words. So here, asthma, luck, 6, stumble, betray, hell, dinosaur, garlic, excuse, weird, trick, host. And you have to back up these words to save a copy of the words somewhere. And they tell you, never disclose your seed, never type it on a website, do not store it electronically. So what's a bit confusing for a security person is that they tend to use technical terms the interchangeably not necessarily in the right way. So this is technically not your seed, this is your passphrase. And the seed will be derived from the passphrase. But before generating the passphrase, they generated the first value that you may want to call a seed. Anyway, and so then you get a seed from this value, and from the seed you generate one or many private keys using the BIP32 tree-based key generation. Okay. So to make sure that you've kept a copy of this, they will ask you all or part of your passphrase, and will only allow you to go through if you've typed the right passphrase. Okay. And then you might want to choose a password. So why having a password on top of a passphrase? So the password will be used for something completely different. It will typically be used to encrypt your secret seed or your secret passphrase. So how will this be done? So you'll give a password. Most of the time, there will not be any sanity check, like you need 2 special characters, 1 number, 1 all caps. It will derive a symmetric encryption key, for example, an AES key, from this password, and it will use this symmetric key to encrypt your passphrase or a seed or some equivalent piece of data. And it will store it on your disk. So when I do security audits, many times I find that this part is pretty weak, in the sense that, first of all, there's no sanity check on the password, and sometimes they would use a weak key derivation mechanism. In other words, where you can brute force the password pretty efficiently. So you might have a very strong seed, very strong passphrase, but if you have even an okay password but a weak key derivation, someone can steal your money. Okay. If they have access to the encrypted to the encrypted key store. Now, a paper wallet is typically that's something that you use to keep a copy, a backup of your seed in a safe or somewhere in your wallet, in your actual wallet. It can be a QR code, it can be something, another fancy representation. There's also some systems where you engrave your passphrase on some metal. It's super annoying to use. Last time I had to use it, it took me like 1 hour to type my passphrase. So maybe it makes you feel more secure, but at the end of the day, it's not really better. So yeah, of course, it's more secure than anything that would be on your computer, because even if someone hacks into all your computers, they will not get your paper copy, your paper wallet, except if you kept a PDF copy on your machine, of course, which you should not do. But then you might lose it. If it's a piece of paper, it might burn. I don't know over time how long it lasts, but I don't know if we'll still be using Bitcoin in 50 years anyway. Well, and something you have to be careful of is, you see there's a QR code, so you don't want anyone to take a picture of your Bitcoin banknote and copy your QR code. Okay. So now hardware wallets, so you probably know what's a hardware wallet. It's just a piece of hardware that is dedicated to storing your crypto money. So it's typically USB flash drive from Factor, like the Ledger Nano S. Trezor is also one very popular hardware wallet. So it's done in such a way that your secret key is used in some allegedly secure storage on the device. And it comes with some features that, for example, will guarantee that even if your machine is compromised, then you need some physical process to authorize a signature, like you need to press a button to validate a transaction. So there's several workarounds to bypass or to compromise this, but yeah, it's obviously more secure. It's not less secure than software wallets most of the time, unless they have really shitty system. So the keys are never really exposed to the OS. It's just signing a record. The keys are never transferred to the OS. The OS just sends the hardware wallet the data to be signed, and the hardware wallet returns the signature or the signed transaction. And even if it's stolen, then you have to unlock it with a PIN or using some 2FA process. So if your hardware wallet is stolen, it's generally very, very hard to recover the private keys. Okay. So yeah, like I said, there's some, if someone might threaten you with a gun and ask you to give out your PIN. So sometimes you have like auto-destruct functions that you give a special PIN and then it wipes out all the private keys. A risk is that you might get logged out of your device if you enter, for example, like 3 or 4 times the wrong PIN. Then it wipes all the secret keys. So if you've used one of these systems, you know that it can be a bit annoying for a number of reasons. First of all, it doesn't always support your favorite coin. It supports the main one like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Litecoin, maybe Ripple, but not all the altcoins. And what's really super, super annoying is when you want to import a passphrase. So for the Ledger Nano S, it's a nice device, but you don't have a keyboard. So how do you enter a passphrase without a keyboard? You have just a plus and minus key. So you do like, you go over all the letters one by one, letter by letter, and it takes forever. And of course, you never get it right the first time, so you have to do it again and again, and then, fuck it, I just use software wallet. So even though it's hardware, and hardware is often perceived as synonymous for secure, I mean, these are retail products, consumer products, and you don't have the same kind of security as you have in, I don't know, pay TV smart cards, for example. So people tried to hack them, and people succeeded. So you had a talk at Black Hat, Black Hat US, I don't know if it was this year or last year. So well, software attack on hardware wallets. And at CCC, in a few weeks, so my friends Thomas and Dmitry, Josh, they will present some some nice results on some hardware wallets. I don't think they say which ones in the abstract. No, they don't. Okay. So typically, if you have some crypto money, you want to have like one hard wallet for daily operations and one cold wallet for the stuff that you will not use, and keep a paper copy, paper backups. That's the best practice, but I've never done like this. So do what I say, not what I do. Well, I never had millions of cryptocurrency anyway. So some general recommendations: only use online wallets as hot wallets, of course. Don't do like me and have everything on online platforms. Only use the relatively recommended trusted online wallets, online interface like MyEther wallet. There's probably a few others, and you try to distribute between hot and cold depending on what you're up to, and make sure to back up everything. So now a few words on exchanges. So like I said before, they generally have most of their money in cold storage. This is taken from Coinbase. So 98% of customer funds are stored offline. Offline storage provides an important security measure against theft or loss, and they distribute Bitcoin geographically in safe deposit boxes and vaults. Okay, sounds super secure. Sensitive data is disconnected entirely from the internet. Data is split with redundancy, AES-256, paper backups. So it sounds pretty secure. Kraken does about the same. They say all new deposits go directly to cold wallets with computer gap, and say all wallets are encrypted, whatever it means. I don't know what they mean by wallet here, but okay. I think Coinbase and Kraken, they're known to do the right thing. Okay. What's a bit surprising is that, so like I said, hardware often means more secure than software, but at least until recently, neither Coinbase nor Kraken were using hardware wallets, hardware storage. And most exchanges actually do not use hardware wallets, nor hardware devices. So is it really a problem? That's something it's not really obvious. I mean, we could discuss it because in the context of cryptocurrency and its kind of application, it really depends on your process on many different things and not just on the storage media hardware software. Gemini is an exception. They do use hardware. They do use HSMs for their cold for the hot storage, for the hot wallet. They use Amazon AWS Cloud HSM system. So Amazon has a bunch of Gemalto SafeNet HSMs, and I think there's some kind of how to call it, remote attestation where you kind of have a guarantee that AWS is actually using an HSM and not just simulating an HSM device. So Gemini is saying for the cold storage, they also use HSM, but actually HSMs that they have in their DC. I don't know what type of HSM they use. But so it's not about hardware or software. It's about how you back up the keys and which person you authorize to issue transactions. So now to conclude this part, there's something that people sometimes call warm wallets, which are kind of in between cold and hot. Is when you have, for example, a hardware component, and for example, in the case of banking institutions, financial institutions, they want to have it disintegrated into their private kind of air-gapped network where you have all the banking compliance and regulation enforced, like at least 3 teams should validate the transactions, everything should be recorded, it should be integrated in the core banking network. But at the end of the day, you want the transaction to be issued, so you need to be connected to a system that is connected to internet. So you may want to have a kind of data diode or something similar that allows you to send something out, but not to receive anything. But again, it's hard to do because if you issue an Ethereum transaction, you have to get from the blockchain some information like the index. So it's not always possible to only send data out without receiving anything. Okay. So I'm done for the wallet part. Oh, 20 minutes left, perfect. So it's surprising when you look at Bitcoin. So the reference code is in C, in the C language, which is known to have, many bugs. Ethereum, most of the nodes are in Go or not in C as far as I know. But there's never been a huge disaster in Bitcoin nor Ethereum. So now you might say, oh, but there's the DAO on Ethereum. But no, DAO was about a smart contract. So it's like if you blame GCC for a bug in your C program. So there's 2 types of bugs in blockchain systems, like in any other system. So design bugs, when the functionality works as intended, but the design is bad, so it can be abused by an attacker. And software bugs, when the design is good, is safe, but the implementation is not. Okay. So you can find this bug either in the blockchain, in the platform itself, or in the code that runs on top of it, like in Ethereum smart contracts. So as an attacker, you can target either the wallets, where the money is directly, or the nodes of the network that will validate transaction and authorize transactions. So generally kind of agnostic of proof of stake. So yeah, as an attacker, so what's your main motivation? So of course you want to be rich, you want to get free money because it's so hard to work. So you can do this in different ways. You can directly steal people's keys. So if I steal your key, I can sign checks on your behalf, I can steal all your money most of the time. And it's not like in a bank when you have a warning, you have an alert system. Here it's decentralized, it's free, it's democratic, so you can steal anyone's money without any warning. Another way to get free money is just to issue transactions on someone else's behalf, but sometimes you can do it without having access to the private keys. And the last way to do it is like the Robinhood way, is not stealing anyone's money, but just creating coins out of thin air, for example, with double spend-like attacks. So attackers might want to do other things like DOS, lock users out of their account, or just point out the shortcoming of another platform to harm their reputation and maybe short the coin, this kind of operation. So I've listed 10, maybe not the 10 worst bugs, but 10 of the most dramatic issues. So you may know some of these are pretty well known. So this one was ridiculous. It's in 2010. There was a bug in Bitcoin. So a Bitcoin transaction is essentially a list of input, money that comes in, and outputs, the money that goes out to other accounts. So you want that the money that is spent is at most, the money that goes out is at most the money that comes in. So you have to check that the output transaction, the total, is not bigger than the money that you have to spend. Here the problem is that there was an integer overflow, so if you had a too big number, if the sum made a too big number, then it would wrap around the integer type, and instead of giving a huge number, it would give a ridiculously small number, and the validation would be passed, and the transaction would be authorized, and all this money would go somewhere. So this huge amount, I don't know how many billions were created out of nothing. So the good part is that this was fixed within only 5 hours and patched, and nobody's money was stolen. So, and since this bug in 2010, there haven't been any bugs of this level. So yeah, it's maybe the best known bug in Ethereum. So technically not on Ethereum, but on a smart contract that was running on top of Ethereum. It was the DAO, what is that for? Decentralized Autonomous Organization, something like this. So I won't go into the details because it's pretty technical. You have to understand how the smart contract programming paradigm works. So I tried to simplify as much as I could and have the following idea. So the attacker is writing another smart contract that will attack the victim's smart contract. And the way it works is like the attacker will pretend to withdraw money from the contract that is attacked. And then this contract will think that it has less money than it actually has. And then the attacker will kind of steal the difference. Okay. I don't know if it makes any sense because it's a bit far from the technical aspects. But to fix it, you just had to issue this patch. So just modify literally 2 characters in the smart contract. And I think maybe like 60, how many millions of Ether were stolen? But quite a lot. So the core reason is not that the programmers were stupid, is that smart contract programming, is very hard. It's a relatively new paradigm compared to the programming we're used to, and there's been a lot of bugs. So it's good to have security audits. Now, if you write a smart contract, you can use some of these libraries that get you like safe arithmetic or safe ERC20 interface. One way to mitigate this risk is that with smart contract, they give you like Turing-complete expressivity. So you might want to have something that's in between Turing-completeness and Bitcoin script, for example. It's expressive enough to do some useful stuff, but not too expressive that it allows all these attacks to work. This one is one of my favorites because it's very nice, very simple bug, and very very powerful. So the ZeroCoin project, it starts from the same idea as Zcash or Zerocash that you may know. So it started from an academic paper, and the people who wrote the academic paper, they said, okay, we have this POC experimental piece of code, but please don't use it. It's experimental. Just don't use it. And of course, people used it, and they created their own blockchain, Zcoin, and Pivx. I think one is the fork of the other. I think Pivx is the fork of Zcoin. So when you spend a coin So you want to spend it only once because you want to avoid this double spend problem. So in this system, each coin had a serial number. So the first thing you would do is check that this serial number hasn't been used previously. So you would have different coins, different serial numbers. OK, they have different serial numbers, so I can't spend this one. But then in the second step, you would have a kind of cryptographic zero-knowledge proof where you would use this serial number in the proof to create the actual transaction. And that's the part that would actually authorize you to actually spend the money. The problem is that in the second check, the serial number as an integer, as a big integer, was reduced modulo q. So from a potentially big number, you would get a smaller number. And when you make a reduction, so modulo q in this case, you can easily find different numbers that map to the same value. So what the attacker could do is find different serial numbers that were equivalent modulo q, thereby passing the first check. But when doing the second check, then the same coin could be used several times. So it was not just a double spend, but a many spend attack. And then again, the fix was just one line of code, checking that the serial number was smaller than the group order, which is q. Okay. I don't know if this was actually exploited, but I presume it was, but I don't have any evidence of it. Okay. So here we can blame cryptography and cryptographers because it's so complex and fragile. But maybe the biggest lesson is, like, if people tell you not to use their code, maybe don't use it, especially if there's like millions of money protected by your code. Oh, this one is fun too because it's so bad. I found it I think last year, and it's a design bug. It's not a software bug. The problem is that the addresses in Lisk, which is a kind of smart contract platform working in a kind of JavaScript, that the addresses are only long of 64 bits. So if you know a little bit of crypto, you know that 64-bit is relatively small if you want to find collisions, if you want to find two values that map to the same address. So specifically, in this case, it was fairly easy to find different keys, so two pairs of one pair of public-private key, another pair of public-private key, two pairs of keys that map to the same address. So in other words, you have two keys, two signatures that would allow you to spend money off a given account. And then if you want to find, let's say, you can find also what we call preimage if you're given an address. It was relatively, not extremely hard to find a key that maps to a given address. And once you found a key that corresponds to an already used address, then you can steal people's money by signing checks on their behalf because your private key maps to this address. And that's really bad, and it can be patched. The only way to mitigate it is when you receive money to make at least one transaction. But if you have a cold storage, you will only receive money, you will never spend it. So you had many accounts that had like literally millions of dollars worth of Lisk tokens that were vulnerable. And it's still not fixed. I mean, you can still exploit it. So the only thing that the Lisk people can do is publish an advisory where they say, okay, there's this risk, and to mitigate it, please issue a transaction, and then your account will be protected. Okay. So I think it's, to be honest, really bad design cryptographically. I mean, I don't know what they were doing. And they had other security issues where you had to send your secret key to a node to do whatever. I mean, it was really bad when I looked at it last year. Parity, this one is surprising because Parity is one of the best known organizations in the Ethereum community. They are very brilliant people who know a lot about smart contract, but nobody's perfect, and they had this library which was essentially a smart contract, but the owner of the library was not initialized, so someone could just took over the smart contract library and run a function called initWallet, and they could freeze this library, and the consequence is that all the applications that were using this library were frozen as well. So all the wallets that were related to this library were essentially dead. The money was lost. 10 minutes, perfect. Okay. So smart contract is hard even if you were very familiar with smart contract programming. And yet, one funny part is that the bug actually comes from a patch that was fixing another vulnerability. So that's one problem. Many times when people patch vulnerabilities, they're a bit under pressure. They try to write a patch as fast as possible, and sometimes, all the QA, code review, testing is not properly done. So it's not the first time that I see, a bug in a patch. Okay, IOTA. That's very sensitive matter, so I will try to use the right word. So IOTA, it's not technically blockchain. And the website say, we don't have a chain, we don't have blocks. It's a bit different. It's more like a graph. There's some other details, like internally they use what they call ternary encoding with 0, 1, 2 instead of 0, 1. That doesn't matter much. What's more interesting is that they use post-quantum signatures. So they don't use ECDSA like Bitcoin or Ethereum. They use something different that would be resistant to quantum computers. And internally, this type of post-quantum signature that they use, it's essentially based on a hash function. It's essentially only hash function computations. So we have many good cryptographic hash functions out there. We have SHA-2, SHA-3, Blake2, many others. But in this context, they wanted something that be very, very efficient. So they designed their own hash function. And it was called curl, so they created their hash function. But the problem is, as you may know, one of the criteria of a secure hash is that it should be hard to find collisions. So collision is two different messages that map to the same hash value. So for example, it should be hard to find M1 and M2 that H of M1 is equal to H of M2. But in IOTA, their hash was not collision resistant, and they didn't know it. And cryptographers found it. And when cryptographers found it, they were like, oh, man, it's so ridiculous. It's relatively easy to design a secure hash. But their one was so weak that it was really, from the perspective of cryptographers, really bad, really embarrassing. And from this, there's been huge drama online, on Twitter and other places, because from the perspective of cryptographers, it was a disaster, and it was really a silly mistake. But from the perspective of the IOTA people, it was not that bad, because it was not straightforward to exploit. So to exploit it, you needed to tell someone to sign something on your behalf, and then to authorize you to broadcast it on their behalf. So really not the typical scenario. But still, cryptographically speaking, it was really bad. So I think maybe the IOTA people did not acknowledge the amplitude of the problem, and maybe cryptographers kind of ignore the fact that it was hard to exploit, and then it became very emotional, and people called themselves, don't know how, but okay. So now they fixed it. Well, in the fix, they use something, they essentially use Sketchstack or SHA-3, but and nothing is safe. But well, anyways, I don't know who is to blame here specifically, but I mean, you just don't do this. You just don't create a new hash function without any security audit, without any review by any cryptographer, without any peer review, and just put it out on your blockchain where literally billions worth of money are protected. I mean, I would not do it. I mean, I've been doing crypto for 12 years. I'm quite confident about my cryptography skills, but I would never do this, seriously. So on the one hand, it was kind of PR disaster for IOTA, but the token value didn't suffer much. So I encourage you to look more at IOTA because it's very different from the rest, and I think it needs more review of the protocol. Oh, yeah, this one was ridiculous. The verification, the check that you had enough money to spend when issuing a transaction was done on the client side instead of the server side. So you can just modify your client and say, okay, always return yes when I'm asked if I have enough money to spend. And what coin was it? XRB? Okay. Batch overflow, it was very nice integer overflow. So in the context of ICOs, people sometimes have to distribute many tokens to many people. So instead of doing n transactions for n people, they created this batch transfer function where you would send the same value, underscore value here, to a list of receivers. So if you want to send the number, let's say, n bitcoins to m people, you need to have at least n times m tokens in your account, in your wallet. But what if n times m is so big that it will overflow the integer type? So that's what happened here in the red rectangle. The total amount overflowed the UN256 type. And the check that the account had enough money, of course, was validated. And lots of money could be created. It's kind of not a double spend, but they were just creating money out of thin air here. Okay, and it's the kind of thing that, seriously, you're doing a security audit, you find this in 5 minutes. I only have 5 minutes left, by the way, so maybe I'll skip this one. It's a cryptocurrency where they don't have a white paper, but a black paper, and they have the Matterhorn on their page, which looks Swiss and is maybe supposed to inspire trust, but it was very weak in the sense that the difficulty of mining was based on the timestamps received. So if you have a security class, the first thing you do is do not trust potentially malicious input and sanitize untrusted input, and they weren't doing this. So an attacker could artificially reduce the difficulty to something ridiculously low and mine lots of bitcoins, lots of these coins very easily. Okay, that's a bug I found in a utility generating keys. I will skip this one just to not go over time. The problem is that you give a seed of 32 bytes, but it was only actually using the first 16 bytes. Because the API was really bad, by default it only took 16 bytes, and you had to specify explicitly if you wanted more bytes to be used from your seed. So it's an API design problem, and we fixed it. Okay, so don't use a random open source project in production. And if you look at all these Node.js applications, they have huge dependency trees, and you will always find something that is insecure or deprecated. So to conclude with this talk, I think there's many more bugs to be found, because there's a lot of code, very complex code, new protocols, sometimes unsafe languages that are used. Also, deployment is sometimes a bit rushed. The QA, the testing is not always properly done. A lot of third-party dependencies, so really all the recipe for disaster. Just a recent example is EOS. So it was a CPP application, I think around 1 million lines of code. It's huge. And they have all these features, so low overhead Byzantine fault tolerance, low latency block confirmation, sparse header-like client, time delay security, biometric hardware secured keys, blah, 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 blah. And of course, what happened? Literally a few days, weeks after it was launched, really, scary bugs were found, like an RC remote code execution by the Vulkan 360 team. Guido Franken found many bugs by fuzzing. He made $120,000 in a week by finding 12 bugs each. That was rewarded 10K. Hacker exploits betting platform to win jackpot 24 times. So, yeah, I don't know if they had security audits or not. Yeah, so I'm finishing. So I'm doing security audits as a day job, but it's not a panacea. I mean, we can only find so much. We won't find all the bugs. And yeah, I don't know what's the right way to do, but hire good programmers, use automated tools, but try to be maybe conservative and not design your own protocol, because blockchain people tend to reinvent everything, reinvent protobuf, reinvent the TLS. So try to reuse what's already out there and then hope for the best. Okay, thank you very much.